welcome back to Thread and Glue. We are going to continue with our quilt series on the Labrynth Quilt. That's this quilt here. And I probably should show it this way because I'll be flipping this video. So, okay. So we're on the part that is the layout and sewing the middle block, the big block in the middle. So what it tells us to do is to refer to the diagram, and I'm referring to the diagram for the king quilt. You refer to the diagram that is for the size that you are working on, and there is one for each size inside of the quilt pattern. So we'll just get started, and our pattern tells us that we need B, which is our background, a 5.5 by 35.5 inch strip. So I'm going to look at my strip, my set for B, and I know it's not one of the small squares, and it will be one of the longer squares, I believe. So we're going to start there, and I'm going to measure it to make sure that I have it right, and it should be 35.5 inches long. So 1 and, oh no, this one is not the right one. This one is 30 inches long. So this one we'll put aside. We'll need it in a minute, but we don't need it right now. So let's see where the one is that we actually need, because I cut several. That's why I'm measuring. Always measure to make sure first. And it may be one of these front ones. I'll have to unpin that. Let's try it and see how it goes. Yeah, we've got them folded together still. So it is 1 by 35.5. So this is the right one. This is the one we're going to want. And it will be our first top corner. So we'll sit it here. Then we need B plus 5. And I've got that labeled here. And so we're going to take one of those. And it says for us to put B at the top corner. So we're going to do that. And then we're going to take another B plus 5. But this time, we're going to put B in the opposite corner. So there that is. And then we need another 5.5 by 35.5 inch long strip. So let's make sure again. Always check and measure twice. It's so much easier to do that than it is to try and go back and unpick everything. So that is our very first row. So I'm going to leave those lined up here, and we will put our second row out here on the bottom. To move those out of the way and get us some room. Okay, so our second row is a 5.5 by 30.5. So one of the first ones that I had picked up will be the right size. So let's flip over to that and make sure I've got it right again. 5.5 by 30 inches. 30.5. Okay, yeah. Then we'll put that down here. And then we're going to put B plus 5. So we're going to get that B plus 5 again. And this time, the B, the background, is up in the left corner. And then we need a 5.5 by 10.5 inch strip. So we should have that in our background. I don't think this one's right. No, this is right. 5.5 by 10.5. This is the right one. Okay, so we'll put that down there. Oh, I'm sorry. That's the wrong one. That was the background. I need it from 5. And so 5 is up here. Let me pull one of those out of there. That's why it didn't look right. Always make sure you've got the right set that you're pulling from. This is the hardest part for me in any quilt, is to make sure I got the right one. Yeah, this is it. So it will be the next piece. And then following that piece is B and 5 again. So we will take that one and we'll put, B goes in the upper right hand corner. So we'll put that down. And then next we need a B that's 5.5 by 30.5 again. So let's pull one of those. That's not it, that's the wrong one. Okay, what size is this one? And this one is going to be it. So we'll put that there. And because I'm limited on space for laying this out, I will go ahead and we're going to sew together the first 2 rows, all the way across in each of the rows. And I'll meet you at the sewing machine for that step. Just a moment. Okay, we're at the sewing machine and I have got the first long strip of background and I've kept it in the order that I picked it up in the first block. So that's all we're working with to start with. We're going to put it in line with our 1/4 inch foot or your flat foot, whichever one you're using. Make sure you hold the pieces together. If you do not pin, that's fine, but you have to make sure they're together and that they do not come apart. So we're going to put that stitch down through there. And you're doing a 1/4 inch seam through all of this. And you do not have to back stitch because the seams are going to overlap and that will seal it in. So that is our first stitch. And we are ready for the very next block to put on there. So let me grab it. And it goes just like this. So we're going to lay it together. All lined up nice and neat. We're going to put it down under our foot. A 1/4 inch foot, making sure that we're butted up against the rail. And we're going to sew it down, keeping it lined up and held together. Okay, we're ready for our last piece in this strip. So let me grab it. And we are going to just lay it together. And make sure that you have right sides together on your fabrics when you're sewing. And that's got that lined up nicely there. So I will put it over here under our foot and stitch that right all the way down. And notice I've got just a little bit of thing there that's coming on that we got to fix. Keep that straight. Now I'm going to look at my seam because I thought that my first part of it was a little bit shy of maybe my 1/4 inch. So we're going to fix that. We're going to go back to the beginning and start that seam over, making sure that we have it lined up. And if it had been too big of a stitch, we would have had to undo that. But because it was not too big, it was actually too little, I was able to go ahead and do the stitch over. See, there's not a whole lot of difference in the stitch. I mean, there's very small difference, but that small difference will add up from block to block and will make your entire quilt be wonky and off of its course. So at this point, you want to use your iron and iron this entire row. You're going to press, I should say, not iron, press, because you don't want to skew any of your bias edges. So I'll do that, and I'll be right back with you just a moment. Alright guys, I'm back, and we're ready for our next row. So I've picked up the first piece, and I've picked up the second piece. Always work from left to right on your row. That will keep you in order. And when you are pressing, one thing I did not mention that I need to mention now is that you want to press all of your seams that you made to one side. So on my first row, I pressed all of them to the left. When it comes to the second row, I will press all of them to the right. We do this so that the seams will do what's called nesting, and that is where the two seams lay flat, and it acts as if it's one seam. You don't have extra bulk, is what you get rid of. So just a little word there on the pressing part. And now we're good to get this started on row 2. And we're going to make sure that we're lined up against the metal and stitch right down it, just like we did the first time. Okay, that's our first stitch done on the second row. And I'm going to open it up and grab our next piece. And our next piece is this semi-short long piece. I know that's kind of an odd way to describe it, but it's not short like the half square triangles that we did are, but it's more of a rectangle. But it's not as long as the big ones that we've been working with either. So, you know what I mean. Alright, we'll stitch it 1/4 inch, just like we did before. Alright, and we're going to open that up and get our next piece. And this is our next piece here. I've picked it up just like it was, so it's ready for us to line up. And stitch all the way down. Alright, we're ready for our last piece in this second row. And we're going to lay that together. It's the really long one. Making sure that we're really lined up good. Top to bottom, side, everything. Alright, we are ready for pressing for our second row. So let me do that and I'll be right back. Okay guys, we're back. And I have pressed the second row and I have gone over to my table and taken the first row and flipped it over upside down on the second row so that we had our triangle in the middle that we were making. Okay? That's not hard. You just flip the one row over. That's it. So then what I did, because this part you do need to pin or clip, I use clips, and I took and lined up the two side seams best first. Okay? And once I lined that up and lined the other one up, I pinned in the middle. And then from there, I worked my way out to each edge. You always start pinning from the middle if you can, so that anything that is off or skewed, you can take care of as you go along. You can do what's called easing on some stuff. And what easing is where if your fabric is a little bit off and you've got a little bit more on the top than you do, say, on the bottom, then you just pin it with just a little bit of a small little hump in each little spot as you go along till you get it pinned back right. But I did not do that this time because after I got done pinning all the way down mine, I did find that mine is off, and it very well could just be the fact that these are bias edges, and as we're sewing and tugging and pulling and moving, it will stretch. So pinning from the inside to the outside will keep you from having to go back and unstitch the entire thing. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to line up from the other end, and because it is right on, I'm going to take the first clip out, lay our fabric, both of them together, lined up right against our 1/4 inch foot. Okay, and we're going to just start sewing, and we're going to sew 1/4 inch all the way down the entire row. As you come to your pin or your clip, just pull it out and hold your fingers in that spot until you get close. Don't get too close because it will sew through a finger. I have seen that happen. So keep going and move your fingers out of the way. Go back a little bit further on it. You're doing great. I like to get up pretty close with the clip first before I unclip anything. And then I'll unclip, because I have a pretty good stretch here, and you don't want to leave an even bigger stretch by taking it off too soon. Okay. Okay, this is where we're going to need to do a little bit of an ease, because it has gone through and it has moved some of our fabric. It's shifted. So this is puckery a little bit, so we're going to just work it in. That's what it's called. Working it in is called easing. Okay. And a little bit more to ease in there. So we'll keep it going. The reason you ease it instead of just folding it over is because you don't want to tuck in it. And a tuck would leave you a wonky place that would show on your quilt. If that happens, you want to take that out and unstitch it. If you were using a walking foot would help keep it from stretching any, because what's happening is the little metal teeth that are underneath your foot are actually catching the fabric from underneath and pulling it through. Where the top foot does not have those feet on it. You can see on this one, there's no extra feet on the back side of this foot. So it does not tug and pull at the top fabric like the bottom fabric does. What a walking foot does, and I'll grab one here and show you. This is what my walking foot looks like. And when you put it on your machine, this bar goes over this little ridge here. And that's what makes it move up and down. And do you see these? These are the little teeth. And those teeth go through here and pull the fabric on the top. So it pulls at the same time in the same place as the bottom does. That's why a lot of people prefer to quilt with a walking foot. Because it does do that pulling at the same time. And we may demonstrate that here in the next row or two and just show you how it works. Okay, Keep on going, making sure that your seams stay laid down where they're supposed. Whoop! Our fabric's trying to get off there a little bit, isn't it? Let's make sure we keep that lined up. Okay. You make sure your seams are laying the direction that they are folded in, that they are ironed in. So for me right here, I've got this going under it. The one on the bottom is going the opposite. And that's good. That's what we want. Okay. Pause as you need to readjust. That's just fine. There's no problem doing that. Okay, I'm stopping so I can take that clip out and making sure that my seam is folded down like it's supposed to. My fabric is still lined up. And we're ready for this next clip. And I want to move it just a little bit because that was trying to come undone a little bit. So we're going to lay it back together like it's supposed to be. And then we'll be back in good shape. Okay, we're getting close to the end now. Now we have one clip holding the rest of it together, so we're not going to take that off until we get really close. Okay, we're right there at it. I'm going to take that off and make sure that our fabric is lined up and together. And we're going to stitch on down the rest of the way. Okay, I'm not going to worry about this little bit of extra that's hanging off here. And the reason I'm not is because we are going to go through and finish all of the rows first. Once we finish all of the rows, we're going to come back and we're going to square up, is what they call it, where you make sure that all of your edges are even and square all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead and do my other rows, and I will meet you back here in just a few minutes so we can go ahead and check out our progress. Just a moment. Okay guys, I told you I was going to show you how to use the walking foot. So we're going to do that real quick. And what I am doing is I'm unscrewing the foot shank, is what they call it. It's this actual long piece here, not just your clicking piece there. It's the long piece, and that's called a foot shank. So you want to unscrew that. Don't screw it all the way out where the screw comes out. You don't need that. Now what you're going to do, you're going to take your walking foot. This little part here is going to go around that screw. So you're going to hold this lever up so it goes around the bar, over the bar, and then you're going to slide that little hook around your foot, if I can get myself to do it. Goodness. Okay, there we go. Now you want to take and tighten your screw back up. Make sure you tighten it real good. Real tight by hand is fine. If you can't tighten strongly by hand, then you want to use, you want to go ahead and use your screwdriver. Now what we're going to do is we're going to line it up because we're still doing 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. I still have my 1/4 of an inch seam selected, and it's the same width as my standard foot width. So I'll still be able to line up on my edge for mine. You want to test it first. You test it. And that's always good to test it. So you hear the sound difference? It's making the motion of going up and down, so you're hearing it actually clicking together as it goes down it. You're still keeping it lined up, holding it together. And just sew right to the edge. And it's just like sewing the other ones. The only difference is that you're using the edge of the foot instead of your guide. So that's how you use the walking foot, and I'll be back. Okay guys, I have decided to pause this video here and let us catch up for the next video. Thanks a lot for staying and hanging out. I hope you're doing great on your project, and I look forward to seeing you next time.